All right, welcome back to Big 12 Insiders Fall Camp Preview. Today, we got Alec Busse with Iowa State from our 24/7 channel with Iowa State. Alec, how's it going today, my man?
Good. Thanks for having me on. Appreciate it. Fun as always to hop on the show with you, of course, and excited to preview college football season because it's coming up quick. We've got games next weekend.
Absolutely. I can't wait. It seemed so long ago. I saw you in Vegas. It seemed like football season was a million days away. And lo and behold, here we are. It's here. I cannot wait. So, well, let's get into it with Iowa State. First things first, man, just kind of give me, just kind of a feel of what the program is feeling like as of today with, going through a couple of weeks of camp, and how are things going with Iowa State right now?
Yeah, I think optimism continues to grow as the season comes closer and closer. We've been able to speak with Matt Campbell twice as the season gets a little bit closer to kicking off against North Dakota in week 1. Of course, easy layup opponent for Iowa State before the Cyhawk game in week 2 when they go on the road to play at Iowa. But yeah, I think optimism is growing at various position groups across the roster. I think that they just feel like they have a really good grasp of what this team is, who returns, the type of contributors that they return, and then some of the transfer additions that they've made in the offseason and the impact that some of the freshmen have kind of come in and made, whether they enrolled on campus in January or they got to campus in June and they're now going through fall camp for the first time.
Gotcha. You talked about returning a lot of guys at Iowa State. Give me some of the strengths of the offense this year that not only Iowa State fans, but more importantly, Big 12 fans can kind of look to and try to pinpoint what some of the strengths that Iowa State has going for them on offense.
Yeah, I think it's obvious that you have to look first, right, at the passing game. You returned the Big 12 freshman offensive player of the year and Rocco back last year, threw for over 3,100 yards, had 23 touchdowns on the year in his first season as a starter. And then you return, potentially 2 all Big 12 wide receivers, and Jaden Higgins and Jalen Knoll, 2 guys who combined for close to 1,700 receiving yards last year, about 13 touchdowns. And, I think that there's good depth behind those guys in the pass catching game as well. You can highlight, tight end Ben Bramer, who had a couple touchdown receptions as a true freshman last season, and then 2 transfer additions in the wide receiver room, Isaiah Alston and Eli Green, both come up. Green was obviously at North Dakota State, an FCS powerhouse. And Alston had, some fairly promising numbers at Army in that triple option offense the past 4 seasons. Battled some injuries in his career, and Iowa State hopes to be able to keep him healthy. But they also have Benny Nagoye, a redshirt freshman who only had 1 catch as a true freshman last year, came in the bowl game. I believe it was about a 46, 50-yard reception. So that's obviously pretty inspiring if that's going to be your 1 catch. But the passing game is certainly the strength of the offense.
Gotcha. Some of the pitfalls that if things don't go right, or what are maybe some of the concerns on the offensive side that fans, coaches, everybody may be looking for to try to avoid this year with Iowa State?
Yeah, I think it probably starts up front just with the offensive line. It's a group that struggled a little bit last year, but they do return all 5 starters from last season, and they add a couple transfers, one of which, Jalen Travis, left tackle, I do project to start for Iowa State this fall, the other being Dylan Barrett. He comes in from Wisconsin, where he's played the last 3 or 4 years. He's more of an interior guy. You can see him play either guard position or at center. I think offensive line, because you returned so much from last season, you expect it to kind of take a step forward. I think you feel like you have pretty good known quantities in Gerard Hufford on the interior, and Tyler Miller at right tackle. Like I said, I think they're confident in Jalen Travis being able to start at left tackle. He transfers in from Princeton. And then Brendan Black, he enters a true sophomore season for Iowa State this fall. He started 7 games for Iowa State last season up front at right guard. I project him to kind of stay in the starting lineup this year as a true sophomore. But I think you're also going to be able to see offensive line coach Ryan Clanton more often rotate to get his 5 best players on the field, keep guys fresh, keep guys maybe preventing injury just a little bit more. If someone's a little bit banged up, you don't have to keep somebody out there. And that's where you could see a Dylan Barrett get into the rotation. You could see last year's starting center Jim Boniface get into the rotation a little bit more. But there's good experience across the front now. You're going to be starting 3 seniors, and that's always something that, inspires a good amount of confidence.
Gotcha. So moving to the other side of the football with Iowa State, what are some of the things, strengths and weaknesses that we can be looking forward to with the Iowa State defense this year?
Yeah, I think it all starts on the defensive line if you're looking
Yeah.
for strength. They have so much depth there. Similar to the offensive line, they return basically everybody from last season. You're going to see Tyler Onyeta come back on the edge. You're going to see Jared Singleton and Dom Orange return on the interior. Joey Peterson also returns on the edge. Two young guys return on the edge as well, like Kenny Iziagu, Samuel Same. Lesser known names, I would probably say, even amongst Iowa State fans, but they did play a good number of snaps a season ago. Then on the exterior of the line of scrimmage, you're also going to see Kennard Snyder, someone who has really impressed throughout training camp. He's a transfer from Louisiana Monroe, had 5 sacks a season ago. He's a little bit smaller, maybe not your stereotypical build of an edge rusher. I think they list him at 6 foot, 6'1". He's probably a little bit closer to 5'9", 5'10", 5'11", somewhere within that range. So he's built a little bit more like a running back or maybe a linebacker. But he's got good burst, someone who, they've worked a lot with his technique, but they're really just high on his athletic traits. And he's improved a lot of those things since getting to Iowa State in January. And if you're talking about weaknesses, for me, it's probably corner. I think corner might have the most question marks of any position group on the team. You lose TJ Tampa, 4th-round draft pick by the Baltimore Ravens, but you do return. Miles Purchase has started for multiple years for Iowa State. Jontez Williams, I think, will jump into a starting role full time for Iowa State this fall. He started against KU last year, started against Memphis in the bowl game. He struggled in those opportunities, particularly against Memphis, I would say. But they've talked him up a ton this offseason as somebody who has had a really strong several months, someone who they're high on his ability to kind of make those improvements. He's more of an under-recruited prospect, I would say. He's kind of interesting to me. Behind him, JUCO product, Matthew Bess, and Darian Porter will also be in the rotation for Iowa State at corner. To me, it's just a position with some questionable depth. You've got 7 scholarship guys at that position. 3 of them are classified as either a freshman or redshirt freshman. And, 2 of them in the room are transfers or a JUCO prospect, and that's Best. Ryan Robinson Jr. comes from LSU, and then you've got 2 additional freshmen. So 4 of the 7 guys are completely newcomers to the position group, and that's a position that just has a lot of physicality. You're asked to make a lot of plays on the outside, and guys get banged up there. So depth there and proven depth at that position is a little bit of a concern for me entering fall camp or entering the season.
Gotcha. So in my opinion, Alec, I've been talking to a lot of people within the conference, obviously here, and I think Iowa State's one of those teams that I think is a little bit underrated with what they have coming back. I know people kind of look at the season at the beginning of the season last year and think, oh, well, but hey, man, there were some circumstances, some stuff going on that I don't even know that a lot of teams could even deal with. I think it's a testament to Matt Campbell. I think I told you before. I think, even with all the success that he's had, that might have been the best coaching job that I've seen anybody do all of last season. I just think it might have been his best job there. Having said all of that, expectations for this year, what does that look like? What does a successful season look like at Iowa State this year?
I think it's a really good question. I was actually texting with one of our staffers over at Cyclone Alert a couple weeks ago about this, and it was like, what number regular season wins is defined as a success for Iowa State this year? I think the Vegas betting line is like 7.5 over under. So I think 7 wins, you're probably a little bit disappointed. 8 wins, you're meeting expectations for a lot of the fan base. 9 wins, you're really excited. 10 wins, you're ecstatic. I mean, 10 wins is something that Iowa State has never accomplished in its program history. And if you get to 10 wins, you're probably going to be playing for a Big 12 championship, or at least right in the picture of it entering the last week or 2 of the regular season. So I think if you can get to 8 to 9 wins, you're going to feel really confident about what you accomplished in the 2024 season if you're Iowa State. And, they're picked, I think, top 6 in the Big 12 and that preseason media poll that we all submitted that was released around the time we were in Vegas.
Yep.
I think that's a realistic expectation for this team. I think that there's a world where, all the returning production comes together and they go down to Arlington and they play in the Big 12 championship game. I also think there's a world where you look at their schedule, particularly in November, and it's difficult and it's tough and it's a lot of close games. And, close games come down to 1 or 2 plays. They come down to
Right.
a turnover here, a missed tackle there. And you end up 6-6 or 7-5. Like, I think that's how narrow the margins could be for Iowa State this season. And I think that's kind of how it could be for a lot of teams. I would say that for every team in the league, even though 2 that are picked at the top. Like, I think that, I don't know the numbers for Utah and Kansas State. I think they're closer to 8.5 or 9.5, but like, there's a very real world where those teams, throw a pick here or lose a fumble there, and they go from being a 9-win team to a 7-win team like that. So it's that kind of dynamic in the Big 12 this year. I think if Iowa State gets to 8 or 9 wins, it would be something that, I think you're pretty confident of and proud of if you're a Cyclone fan.
Gotcha. And, that kind of answered my next question, or you did, because I was going to say, well, if they don't meet expectations, what's it look like? Well, in the Big 12, it doesn't mean that you're terrible. It just means, you know what, a play here or there, a missed field goal, a penalty at the inopportune time, you could be 5-7, 6-6, and you could still be a good football team. You just played a lot of close games. I think we saw that with a couple of teams last year, that they won all the close games, that they played. And so their record looks really good. But in all actuality, it's like, okay, I get that you won all the games, but how much better are you than everybody else? And I think we've talked about that a couple times. The parity of the Big 12 is just going to be incredible. I can't wait for the season to start. That's why I'm so excited about it. But lastly here, I don't want to get you into a record prediction because I don't know. Sometimes I think those things are tacky, trying to predict a record or anything like that. But if the season does go the way that a lot of Cyclone fans hope that it goes, tell me what that, not necessarily what you said earlier, but define how that would be. Like, is it, hey, the offense played great? Does the defense do this? Did they win a bunch of close games? Find what that might look like.
Yeah, I think in ultimate success in the eyes of an Iowa State fan this year is probably getting to 9 wins. Anything on top of that is great. And if they get to 9 wins, and that includes a combination of wins over, your rivals at Iowa, the game at Arrowhead against KU, and then you're able to end the regular season with a win over K-State in Farmageddon on Thanksgiving weekend. Like, I think that's like a supremely successful year for an Iowa State fan. We'll have to see if that kind of all comes together for them. For me, I think a lot of it is also just like handling your business against teams that are projected to finish near the bottom of the conference on Iowa State's schedule. So that would include, going down to Houston to start Big 12 play and beating them by a couple scores. Baylor, I think, is a team that is projected near the bottom of the conference, but like they could be this year's West Virginia in certain senses too. But beat that team. Central Florida, UCF, they come up to Ames in the middle of October. I think that's a trendy team. I think I've likened this year's UCF team to last year's Texas Tech team, where like a lot of people are circling them as potential favorite to win the conference, or dark horse to win the conference. Find a way to beat that team. Find a way to beat Texas Tech, a team that you might be on an even playing field with, and see if you can, potentially spring an upset against an Iowa or Utah or Kansas State. And if you're able to get to 8 to 9 wins with an upset or 2 on paper entering the season, and you handle your business against the lesser teams, like, that's kind of a mark of a good team, right? Like, you beat the teams you're supposed to, you beat 1 or 2 of the teams that you're evenly matched with, you split those. That's kind of a mark of a pretty solid team. And I think that's kind of what Iowa State is entering the season. Like, they're right around 30th, I think, in the preseason AP poll, if you're going by like points or votes received. That's a pretty solid football team. And I think that's on the table for Iowa State this year.
Gotcha. Well, Alec, again, man, I can't thank you enough for everything that you've done for the channel. I mean, it seemed like you were on every single week, so I appreciate you giving us that time, and I look forward to talking to you a hell of a lot more during football season this year, man. Thank you very much.
Appreciate you having me on, and season's right around the corner. Get ready for that game in Ireland between Florida State and Georgia Tech.
All right. Thank you.